And my name is Lacey Freeman. And okay, I'm now going to share my screen. Can I share my screen now? Okay. Okay, I'll just. Okay, I'm not sharing it yet, am I? Here we are.
No, not yet.
Should be sharing it any moment now. Okay.
Yes.
Can you see? Can you hear me okay? Everybody,
Yes,
can you hear me loud and clear? I haven't got my microphone today because I'm actually at the university where I teach. I finished the lesson this morning. And so instead of going home, I thought I would do the meeting with you here at the university. I actually come from Britain, from the UK, but now I live and work in Italy. So I'm here in Italy, and the weather is definitely better in Italy than it is in the UK. At the moment, I can hear the birds singing and the sun is shining. So it's a lovely day here in Italy. And the last time I spoke to you about reaction creation, I don't know if all of you were here, but today I wanted to sort of talk about materials that you can use to prepare your students to help them to improve, but also to prepare for exams as well, of course, to get them to be more kind of productive and to speak up. I'll be speaking about different levels, of course, but just to give you some idea as well about what different publishers nowadays are doing, what they're offering, what the priorities are. I have worked for different publishers over the years, preparing materials. And for Ellie, for example, for Pearson, and also for Oxford. I've been working for almost 3 years with Oxford University Press, working on materials for the classroom. So I wanted to talk about maybe like materials that are out there which you can use, but also things that maybe you can prepare yourself. So these are 2 books that I wrote over the last 2 or 3 years for university level. This is, and they are very connected to the exams that your colleague was speaking about just now. The first certificate and the CHI, they prepare students for these exams. This is a course book called Elevate, which is we're using now for the first time. But I also collaborated and worked on a book for middle school recently called Kickstart, which is published by Oxford. So these kind of 2 projects I've been working on over the last 2 or 3 years. And so I wanted to obviously use those things when speaking to you, to use some of the material that I have also found myself and share with you some ideas. I have some videos loaded onto that. I hope you'll be able to see them. So please, obviously, you will let me know if you can hear the audio and so on when I show you. First thing I wanted to say is often when we look for materials for our students, we already have this kind of in our heads, this idea of what is suitable and what is not in terms of level. We think, okay, my students have an intermediate level. This maybe if you're looking for some written material or some visual material, you think you're looking for material that is suitable for that level. But sometimes if you find input that is useful in the classroom, even if it's difficult, you can still use it very often. All you have to do is make the task a little bit easier. This serves, therefore, to get students more exposure to authentic English, just by simplifying what you ask them to do. If they have to listen to something, if they have to write something or read something, you can it's like a scale, like when you're measuring something, if it's quite difficult, then add something to balance it a little bit, a task which is easier to do. I want to give you an example of this. now. But first, before I give you this example, I need to know, do you have some paper in front of you? Do you have
Yes.
some? Yeah, okay. Do you have a pen?
Yes.
Okay, great. I mean, it's a strange question to ask a teacher, I know. If you have a pen and some paper. But I would like now, and then the next question I want to ask you is, are you good at art? How many of you, put your hands up if you are good at drawing? Is anybody in the room good at drawing? Oh, there's one, there's Tanya, I think it is. I'm trying to read your name. There is, so one person. There are how many people in the room? 50? Okay, so that's about quite a small percentage of people in the room. Okay, and that's normal whenever I ask this question, no matter what the age. If it's small children or adults, the response is the same. That very few people feel that they are good at art. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to follow, hoping this video works, to follow this TED Talk. First of all, I have to check, I haven't started it yet, but you should see the first image of this guy. He's just about to change the page on a flip chart, on a flipboard. Now, I want you to follow the instructions and to do what he does, because this is a famous cartoonist, and he says that everybody can draw, we can all draw. Of course, we can't all be great artists, but we can all draw, and he shows in a TED Talk. Now you can imagine you would normally exclude this as a task to give to your students because it's complex. A TED Talk is authentic English, it's fast, and it maybe you think, okay, I can't use this, but you can if you calibrate, you change the nature of the task. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to follow the instructions. First of all, this guy shows you the drawing he wants you to do. Okay, he shows you the drawing. So he goes really quickly, and then he takes you step by step, line by line. You have to follow what he draws and draw what he draws. Okay? So let's hope that after this introduction, you can hear it and see it. Nope. You hear?
Okay, so here's how it's going to work. I'll show you the first cartoon we're going to do. So just watch to begin with. Here we go. Just watching. That's going to be our first cartoon. It's a character called Spike. So I'd like you to draw along with me. So I'll draw the first line, you draw, and when you've done that, look up, and I know you're ready for the next line. Okay, here we go. Start with the nose.
So start drawing now.
Now, the eyes, they're like 66s or speech marks. That's it. Next, the mouth. Nice big smile. Now, over here, the ear. Next, some spiky hair. Next, put the pen to the left of the mouth. Little line like that. Pen under the ear. Drop a line like that. Pen to the left of the neck, top of the t-shirt. Line to the left, line to the right. Just hold your drawings up and show everybody. How are we all doing? Okay.
Well, can you hold your drawings up? Can somebody hold their drawings up? How did you do?
That's a great exercise, ladies. Who draw?
Can you turn your camera on just a moment and show your pictures? Oh,
perfect. You see?
Wonderful. And so basically, this is a very engaging exercise with your students. Try it with your students. It's something you can even try tomorrow. I think it's all ages can get involved, and they're listening to English, listening in a natural, authentic way, without really realizing it. They're being exposed to the language. And so this is an example of, something, okay, a TED Talk, which is tough. And I have used it like all levels. For example, this is a class in a middle school in north of Italy, just next to the border with Austria. And believe me, I can't show all the faces of the children, but there were maybe 30, 40 children there, and they had all done their drawing. They had all followed the task. And this is an example. So if you see some input that is useful for your students, that speaks about a subject that's interesting, that you just think about, okay, I'll change the task. Maybe I'll make it more engaging. Maybe, and so that's what you can do with this kind of thing when you find material. So don't necessarily discard something just because, okay, it's authentic English, or it's hard, it's fast, okay. And so now we can say that there are 52 people more in the world that can draw. Okay, you can say now, the great thing about this, the thing I love about this, is that what happens when I do this activity is priceless for a teacher. It's what we always want. Kids come up at the end of the lesson and they say, can I have the link to this video? And I give them the link. And they do it at home, because this is just a little part of the video. He shows 6 templates, 6 cartoon characters. And he says the artist says, from these 6 templates, you can make thousands of different drawings. And so, and that's what we call extensive learning. They are learning something because they want to, they're for pleasure. They will go, some of them may go home and listen to the whole video. And that is gold for us as teachers, getting students to want to do that. Okay, just move. With YouTube, I mean, our students are more they know more about YouTube than we do. As we know, I don't know if it's the same in Moldova, but in Italy, for example, the people that are famous for teenagers are YouTube stars. And I don't even know these people often. They know how to use YouTube, but maybe it's good to remind them, with YouTube, you have like a range of options in the settings where you can actually, maybe the first listening, you can slow it down. Again, just adjusting what they have to do. If the material is interesting, you can slow it down just a little bit, 0.75. The first listening, and then maybe the second listening, normal speed, just to give them a little help at the beginning. You can consider that. Any slower and it becomes unnatural, but 0.75 is still just about okay. You can use the subtitles. Most of these now I've got computer generated subtitles, or they have actual subtitles. So you can use that as well with something like as familiar to them, because what we're looking for with students is to find familiar territory where they feel safe. So, and they do with digital, this digital world with YouTube, that's their world. And so they're probably a little bit more open if you're using sometimes material that belongs to their world and their experience. So this is one example, one idea. And when I'm looking for material, so I'm looking really, like I'm kind of my age, I'm in my 50s. It's a long time ago that I was the age of my students, and I have to sometimes, like go home in a way, like go back to my roots, go back and try to put myself in the shoes of a student. As I said in the abstract, often it's like walking on a tightrope when you make materials that are published for teachers, because, I'm a teacher myself, and I know that what I like may be not exactly what the students like when I teach. So you have to find this balance. And often I think it's like, it reminds me of the story do you know the story of the little girl who goes to school It's a famous story, but it's a beautiful story. Can I share it with you now? It's a very short story, but I think it sums up what we all do, really, when we are being creative. And making materials is a very creative thing. We do it every day in class as teachers. We try to use the materials we have to create materials, to try to get our students to be engaged, to participate, to motivate them. And often we do this by going home. And what I mean by this story, there's a little girl and she's going to school, but the road is icy. It's very slippery. So it's difficult for her to get to school. Every step forward she takes 2 steps back because the road is so slippery. So every step forward she takes, she gets further away from school. She's getting worried because her teacher is going to be angry with her if she is late for school. And indeed, when she gets to school, it's very late. And she says to the teacher, "I'm so sorry I'm late." And the teacher says, "Why? Why are you so late for school?" And the little girl replies, "Well, I took 1 step. It's so slippery on the road. I was walking. I took 1 step forward and then slipped 2 steps back." The teacher thought about this for a moment and then replied, "How did you get to school then?" And the little girl said, "Simple. I just turned around and started walking home." And often I think the moral of this story, walking home, she was walking 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and she arrived at school. The moral of this story is that often we find material by going back to our roots, our values, the things that are important to us. Not the details, not the technology, but the things that were important to us, motivated us. And that's a starting point in creating materials very often, to find that emotional connection with the material. Oops, sorry about that. I'm being a bit kind of clumsy with the videos, but so basically all the material I'm going to show you is a result of trying to find things that would have moved me when I was that age, that belonged to me as well as to them. So the first kind of thing I'm going to show you is, again, it's another thing I'm going to ask you to participate in. I'm going to show you a short film, which I found on the internet. You can find thousands of films on the internet which engage. Again, I found it on YouTube. And here it's a story, but there is no sound. There is no speech. There is just a little bit of music. I want you to watch the first part of this story, and then I will stop it. And then I will ask you what you think you could do with this material, what ideas you think you might have. And often with younger children, I get them to clap to this. If they are young, to get them involved a little bit, to build the atmosphere. Okay, at that point I stop the video always with this activity. I stop the video at that point. And there's some more. There's the ending, obviously. Now it's completely, there's no dialogue. What do you think we could do? Any ideas about what we could do with this activity? Okay, so you have like 1.5 minutes. There's some music, there's a little bit of action, not too much, but enough. Any suggestions?
Write the ending of story. Classic.
So what the ending, to find out to ask what the ending is? Yeah, so that's great practice for the future, for prediction, for will and going to. Yeah.
To write the dialogue.
Fantastic, write the dialogue. Yeah. So these are two brilliant suggestions, I think. Get the dialogue. So, you know, you can have like, if you've got a lower level class and they haven't done much with the past tense, you can like get them to write that. Oh, I'm waiting. Oh, come, hurry up. You know, I need to buy my ticket. The train is coming. The train is, and so on. And what? Oh, my phone, help, and so on. Exactly. Yeah. So you've
Write a list of action verbs.
a list of action verbs. Yes. And to go through and
As well, modal verbs.
Yeah. Modal verbs. Yeah. Wonderful. So already, you know, you can just with a simple video that you find from the internet, you can start to construct a lesson. It's like a canvas. Again, okay, this time you're not drawing, but it's like having a canvas that is blank, and you can get your students to add to the canvas, to make the picture themselves, to create the dialogue, to create the story. Or if they have the past year, you can actually get them to talk about the past actions as well. So it can be a complete kind of revision of grammar just with a simple kind of film like this, just taken randomly from the internet, which I did. Basically, I wanted to find a silent movie. Silent movies are great because you can fill them up, and your students can fill them up with what they want. It gives them a power. It gives them, they're interested in doing it more. Now, the prediction thing you said at the beginning, what do you think what is going to happen? Do you have any kind of idea about what's going to happen next? Because that's the great question. If you get your students to ask this question, it's the question that is one of the most human of questions. It's what drives us to learn. What happens next? All of the great discoveries are due to this question, curiosity. What happens next?
Maybe nothing, or maybe something.
Maybe nothing, or maybe something. We're not hopeful because it's not a kind of a story full of action until now, and well, only towards the end with the theft of the bag.
Maybe the title of the book the man was reading is telling something. Maybe it's hidden something inside of the title. Doubt, if I'm not mistaken.
That's interesting. You were looking at that. Yeah, because you start, that's beautiful. Yeah.
So to look maybe at small details, because we never pay attention to, you know, we are looking at something more fabulous, more something that catch our attention, but never to small details. And small details may bring a lot of stuff like the message of, I don't know.
You see, like we're coming up with so many different possible, look at the details, get them to explain a detail that maybe captured your attention. The detail to find a clue to how the story ends. It's interesting. You could even like at the end of this, because I'm going to show you the ending now, what happens at the end. You can even like get the students to think of a title for the story, to come up with their own title. Most of the students, and again, I've done this with students from middle school, from high school, and from university, all the different levels. Most of the most common ending is that the girl gets on the train, or something like that, or the guy gets off the train. Do you want to see what happens? Let's see if they're right. I'm going to try and speed this up. I hope I can, otherwise when you have a little break while we watch it again, but I'm hoping to be able to speed this up. Yes, I can. Okay. So that's the title of the book. What was it? What did you say it was?
Doubt. Yeah.
This, this actually could be a subliminal message. I think you're right. I think in a certain sense.
So never doubt about something, maybe something is.
Yeah. Or it could be, we'll see. We can go back to that. But now, okay, this scene of the robbery, the most exciting moment. And then there is this moment when the guy says goodbye. We take it from there. Then he goes away. Really something as simple as that, very kind of bad acting and not so much. Believe me, when I tried this in class, some of the students, they are open-mouthed at this ending. They just, because they've invested time in reconstructing the story, making a dialogue, often do that with them, then get them to predict, and they've got a lot at stake at this point. They want to know what happens. They've made their predictions, and then only one person in the 2 years that I've used this story in class has ever guessed before what the ending really was. And so they're surprised, they're engaged. And so this is another example where of adapting material, finding authentic material and using it as classroom material. Maybe making some kind of a reaction. You could be in for a surprise, and if we can surprise our students sometimes, I think we can create this, we can establish an environment where there is this kind of reaction creation. The thing I talked about last time, I don't know how many of you came last time to the talk. By the way, all of the material I'm showing you within the next 24 hours, I already have prepared for you a list of all the links. So if you want to try any of these things, then you can try them. Okay, and I'll just send it to the Meta Administrative Board. I'll send it to you so that then you can distribute it to anybody who wants to try any of these things out. So if the content engages, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to engage. Another example of material is obviously reading. It's something I talked about last time. Reading stories, it's a fundamental, it's like a key, I think, sometimes to creating a response, a reaction in the class. This is a story that I wrote some years ago, and tomorrow I'm leaving for a town in the north of Italy, the northwest, near Milan, to speak to 150 students who have read this story, and they will be full of questions in English for me, and they will be firing them at me. They're about 13, 14 years old. And because they have read the story, it's a graded story, so it's written at a level that they can understand, at a level which is A2. And they will be ready. They'll be curious to know. I will never tell them that I speak Italian, because of course then they will get lazy and they will have to ask the questions in English. Graded readers are a very useful tool, I think. And if you have a course book now, what's happening now in the world of course books is that there tends to be a thing called bundling, which is that the course book, together with the course book, there are also offered a number of graded readers. Oxford do this. I think all major publishers do this now. They're starting to do it. Where together, if you buy a course book for your students, or you will have an online resource where you will have like 30 or 40 or 50 graded stories that you can use in class. And they're great. And the important thing, the key thing you've got to remember with this kind of reading, this kind of activity, is to choose a level which is lower, a little bit lower than your students' level. Sounds strange because we're always doing things with our students where we are challenging them. We are giving them things that are a little bit higher than their level so that they can improve. But sometimes you also have to give them things like this, which are a little bit, well, they're within their kind of grasp. It helps to increase their confidence and their fluency. If you give a student a book, a story to read, where they understand almost every word, they will increase their studies, research has shown that they will increase their fluency considerably, not only in reading, but also in writing, in speaking, in listening. Every aspect, every skill improves. It's called extensive reading, and it's a really powerful tool that a teacher can use. In many countries, they use extensive reading in class. They find books and they use stories. The important thing is that the story must be a story that the student can lose themselves in, that they don't have to worry, they don't have to look up words in the dictionary. And while they're inside the story, they are learning so many things. They are revising the present tense, the past tense, the future tense in context, in a natural context. And so this is the whole idea behind extensive reading. This kind of reading, when we normally read in course books, it's like driving in the middle of a busy city where there are bumps in the road to slow the car down. That's the kind of reading we often get our students to do. And that's fine, that's important. They have to learn to be challenged. They have to have challenging words, challenging vocabulary, challenging structures. But sometimes you want to give your students the chance to go down a flat road on the motorway and to drive as fast as they can without slowing down. And this is, graded readers give an opportunity for a student to do this. And believe me, it makes an enormous difference psychologically if your students read a story and they understand it. So Egghead is A2. If you have a B1 class, this kind of story, they should be able to read with 1 or 2 words here and there, difficult, but it should be fairly simple to read. And it creates a reaction. Egghead has traveled this story that I wrote in 2017. And as I said, in some countries, they use extensive reading, this principle of using material where sometimes, not always, using course books, but also stories which are pitched at a level that is lower than the level of the class. They use them to improve fluency. And this is an example. Egghead, this is an example of a class in Indonesia. In Asia, they read, in university, they read Egghead. But it can be any school, it can be university, high school, any kind of classroom situation. They read the story, and the teacher here, you can see in the frame, he contacted me and said, "Can you do a talk?" And so I said yes, but I didn't realize that in order to speak to these students, I had to speak to them at 3 o'clock in the morning because of the time zone. Now, your country and Italy and where I live, the time zone is not such a problem. It's 1 hour difference. But in Indonesia, it's like 7 hours difference. So I did this conference, and sometimes, and you will be able to see me on the screen. Okay, and that's why I'm telling you this, because I look destroyed. Okay, this is for the reason I'm like half asleep. And sometimes I look up because my family is sleeping upstairs and I'm really worried about waking them up. Okay, but why I'm showing this video is just simply because this is an example of what can happen if you've got material that kind of engages. Now, Indonesia is a culture which is very male dominated. So women are not really encouraged to speak very much. It's difficult to get women to speak even their own language. And so you can imagine with a foreign language, sometimes it's a real struggle to get students to open up and to, this is the challenge. But if you have material that is engaging, now they read the story, they understood it. And I am also a musician, so I make songs, and I use them with the stories and the material that I write to teach. So I use music in my teaching and in my making material. And so I made a song to accompany the story of Egghead, the story that I wrote in 2017. Okay, so these students wanted to surprise me. And this is what they did. Every time I watch this, I see different details because it's a special moment in my life. To a complete surprise that if you look at the student at on the left, who hasn't got a hijab, at the beginning she didn't open her mouth. In the middle, she smiled a little bit, and at the end, she was singing. And this is the kind of thing that, and if you look at the expression of the teacher, if you notice, he is overjoyed because he has something near to whole class engagement. They're all creating, they're all responding to this material. The song is simple. It's in symphony with the story. It's I'm the best, I'm the worst, I'm the last, I'm the first. I'm in chains, I am free. I am you, you are me. And it's like a way of saying, we're all human beings, and we all are, and they related to it. So basically, again, the material that you also stories can engage if you choose a story, the right story, and there are many stories out there that you can find that are graded. It's becoming more and more of I would say, a competitor to course books. Graded reader stories. It's kind of natural. If you think about it, it makes sense because we learn language through stories. Our own language we learn through stories, watching cartoons, reading picture books, listening to our parents tell us stories. It's something that is familiar territory. And so again, we are going home. We are taking 2 steps towards home to get to our destination. This guy, by the way, now is I'm going to meet him for the first time in June. He's come to Europe to study, and we're going to meet, and I can't wait because really was a special moment. So creating custom materials now with technology changing all the time, it's becoming simpler and simpler for you to create material, I think, for you and for me, for teachers in general, even with a simple kind of Windows computer, you can create so many things now. For example, with this PowerPoint presentation I made, I just got together 6 photographs and put them on the same slide. And then the software, which is part of a software that you have with a new computer, with the latest version of Microsoft, it will organize the pictures for you in a way that in random ways, and you can choose the best one. So these are 6 photographs that I took from the internet to tell a story, and then I put them in place. The software put them in place, and there I have something visual for the students. If I want to tell a story, it can be any story. I have 6 photographs that are in the story, and then you can get your students to think about, to follow the story, and to see when what connection the photograph has with the story. And that is a very kind of engaging activity as well. To do that, this is a story, actually, a true story. I don't have time to tell you this story, but next time, I promise you, I will tell you this story of the hands together, of the little cuddly toy, the little girl reading, the winter, the hands reaching out to the sun, and the flowers. I promise you, I will tell you this story the next time we meet. Okay, remember this, but I have to be there. That's the problem. The 3rd time, lucky. Okay, I want to be in front of you, in your country, sharing this story with you. So remember this moment, because then when I tell this story, you will remember this moment here when we made this promise. Okay, so next March or whenever you have a conference, I will be there. Okay, if you invite me, of course, I won't come up uninvited, but if you invite me, I will be there. I got the thumbs up, so that's a good sign. But I'm going to tell you, basically, you can do lots of things with this. So you can get your students to sort of listen for the story, because if you get, when you're doing listening, which is one of the most challenging skills, if you get your students to kind of like listen for a reason, it's much more effective, giving them a real purpose for listening. So to find out these elements within the story. But you can even leave one of the photos out and get them to guess which photo wasn't in the story, and then see if they get it. And then say, can you put that in the story? And then you're getting them to add a layer to the story. Okay, so this story, this is another story. And I really want to tell this story. So I'm going to tell you this story. It's a true story. And so you have to listen, look at the pictures, and you just have to find out when each of the pictures is referred to. Okay, it's going to be like about 3-4 minutes, this story. Are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? Yeah? Because often when we read, like when we listen to stories, we have to be comfortable. One of the problems we have as teachers, we ask our students to read, and they're sitting at a desk, on a chair, behind a table, and it's uncomfortable, isn't it? It's not natural. Normally we read in a more comfortable environment, on the sofa, in bed, or something like that. Okay, well, I hope you're sitting comfortable. This is a true story. In 2014, I went back to England from Italy to visit my father. I often went to visit him and spend some time with him. And I was sitting in the living room, and it was a room that I knew really well because all of the furniture and everything around me was so familiar, because it was a part of my childhood. And so everything had a story, everything in the living room. And at a certain point, I went to the bookshelf, looked at the books, and I saw a book, and I picked it up. And this was, the book was green. And I started to look through it. Now, one of the great things about stories, one of the things I love about stories and reading, is that when you read a story for the second time, it doesn't tell you just one story. It tells you 2 stories. It also tells you the story of you, remembering what you were doing when you last read the book, where you were, how you were feeling. I don't know if you have the same feeling, but for me, it's always like this. When you read a book for the second time, you remember things about yourself. You remember the person you were. And this is what happened to me on this day in 2014. I remembered when I first read this story. And so I remembered a time when I was in the living room and I was just a little boy. I was only 12 years old. And I was sitting with my father, much younger version. And I remember this moment because I remember sitting there next to him and I wanted to ask him a question. I remember really wanting to know the answer to this question. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, have you ever read a book? Because I never saw my dad reading a book, only the newspaper, only the sports pages. And I loved reading. I wanted to know if he ever read. He looked quite offended. He was quite offended by this story, by this question. And he said, yes, of course I've read a book. I said, oh, really? I was really curious. What was the book? He put his newspaper down and he said, well, I don't remember much, but it was green. The cover of the book was green. That's all he could remember. This began a big struggle in my life to find this green book. I wanted to find this green book, my father's green book, because this was a time, obviously, before digital communication. Books were only physical things. There was no digital book. And I wanted to find this book that was green, just simply because I wanted to make an emotional connection with my father. Because my father and myself, we did many things together when I was 12, because we lived alone. It was just myself and my father. And my mother wasn't there. It was just my dad and me. And we were useless at the beginning because we didn't know anything. When my mother left, we didn't know how to cook. We didn't know how to do anything. We realized how important mum was. We realized that mum did everything and we did nothing. And so we had to learn. We had to learn. And so soon we learned to cook, and we could cook 3 things. We knew how to cook sausage, chips and beans was our special dish. Sausage and chips was what we ate most of the time. But sometimes we just had chips. And that was all we could cook. But one thing we never did together was to actually talk about emotions and feelings. He never actually said, I love you, those words to me that I wanted as a child, I wanted to hear. I thought maybe that a book would make that connection, just because I love reading and I wanted to read with him. And so I looked for the green book. It took some time. It took many months. I looked everywhere in the house. But one day I went up to the attic and there was a box full of my grandfather's things. My grandfather's glasses, his reading glasses, his bingo card, his bus pass. There was a comb, all these different objects from my grandfather's life. At the bottom of the box was a green book. I picked it up and I looked at the book, and the story, it was a storybook called The Railway Children. And it happened to be a story that I loved as a child. So I was very excited at this moment because I thought, if my dad can read this book, we can read it together. We can do something together, not just cooking and cleaning and all of this thing, which we are learning to do together. We could maybe, And so I decided to say what to do. One day, when I got back from school, I put the green book in the living room, on the coffee table, between the television and his armchair, because I knew that he would sit and watch the television, and I knew then that he would see the book. And then I went to hide, because I wanted to see his reaction. And so I hid in the veranda by the window and watched and waited. And then I heard him coming down the driveway. I heard him cough because he smoked quite a lot. And he went into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. This is the UK, let's not forget. And I was getting impatient. Come on, Dad, come on. Eventually, he brought his tea into the living room. He turned the television on. He saw the book. He picked it up, and I watched it. And I think I saw, a little smile on his face. After a while, I went into the living room. And this is a very British conversation, I think. He knew that I had put the book there, but he didn't say anything. He said, "Oh, this is a book, Dad. What is it? It's a book I read when I was younger. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's interesting." I really wanted it to start this emotional connection, but it didn't. It didn't make it, because life is not like Hollywood. And it didn't suddenly make my dad and myself share our feelings. This is what I wanted. I wanted that magic to happen. And I'm remembering this moment in my life, in my childhood, and then suddenly I heard my father moving in the living room in 2014, and I went back into the present moment. I was back in 2014. And I thought about my dad. And my dad didn't remember the Green Book anymore. He couldn't remember the Green Book because he had forgotten many things. He was older and he had Alzheimer's, and so lots of things he could not remember. Sometimes he even had difficulty remembering my name, which was very disconcerting. And it's something that's very common now, and maybe many of you have also had this disconcerting kind of experience. After sitting with my father for a little bit longer, I had to go, and so I said goodbye to my father. I said, "Bye, Dad. Got to go back to Italy. You remember that I work there. I live in Italy now." And he looked at me and he said, I'm sorry, but sometimes I have difficulty remembering, names. And I know that you are you David? Are you? And he was struggling to remember my name. And he said, I know that I love you. I can't remember exactly what your name is. And I left. My father said goodbye, and I realized that was the first time my father had ever said those words to me, "I love you." And I think it's because after forgetting so many things, a lot of things that had kind of blocked communication between us had gone. The static that we build up in our lives, and there just remained this feeling, one of the purest of feelings, which is love. Love remained. And so I heard these words from my dad just before he died, 2 years later he died. And in order to deal with this loss of my father, I did what I always do. I started writing, and I wrote him a letter, which sounds crazy, but it made me feel better. And the letter became a story, and this story is the story that I just told you right now. Okay, so that's a story that's quite an emotional story. And as I said in the last time we met, that emotions are really important stories. They really engage, because all of you know what I'm talking about when I talk about loss, when I talk about love, when I talk about all these different things. There are things that everybody has navigated in their lives. They know they can relate to it, and therefore they can be it's more possible for them to be engaged in the story. So there's not just the task of connecting the photographs to the story, but also at a certain point, maybe, if the story is told at the right level to the students, they can actually forget that they're listening in a foreign language. I don't know if this happened to you while you were listening to me and that story about the Green Book, but that's really where, if we get to that point where you are intellectually and emotionally engaged at the same time, learning becomes almost effortless. We're all storytellers, of course. All of us can tell stories in class, and sharing something even quite personal that you want to share can create a connection. And often, even though I think the first lesson with the class is very useful, to get the students to ask questions about you, and then tell your story, a little bit about yourself, and see how many questions you answer. Get your students to write down some questions, and then tell your story, a little bit about yourself, and then ask them, how many questions have I answered on your list of questions that you have written? Okay. How much time do I have? Give me
How much more do you need?
I would like possibly to have another like 6 or 7 minutes, if I can. Is it okay?
Okay, ladies, is it okay?
I'm almost there. I just wanted to show you some of the things that I put in themes in the course book that I developed. I think we've been going for about an hour, okay, maybe just under an hour. So I'm conscious of the fact that you did a meeting before me, so you may be getting tired, but I really wanted to share that story with you. So that's eaten up a bit of time, but with the Italian course books, often we have a story that is actually in the course book, and that I think is really important, that the story is convincing, that the characters are real, that the students can relate to this story and to these characters and to want them to do well. This is a story from the 12-year-olds, basically, called The School of Sound, which I wrote with co-author. I've got the video for this, but I'm not going to show you that because it will just be too much time it would take up. But you know, each story has a video. I don't know if you have a similar kind of course book that you use at school, at your middle school. But it's very important, I think, to choose characters, to choose a book, to choose a story with characters that maybe are 1 or 2 years older than your target, so that they are people they aspire to be, but they're not too old. And so these children here are maybe like about 14, 15, and the students who study are 11 or 12, 13. And also connecting with what we talked about before, in the course book that I wrote, I tried to make a YouTube channel as well, to make it as real as possible. To make a YouTube channel that, because I noticed like my son is 13 and he watches everything on YouTube, and so I watched him and I watched what he was doing, and so that basically, and this is, and to make it the book a little bit realistic, to make each intervention that this group, this YouTube channel, to make it look as like a YouTube channel with the episodes, you know, 2 days ago, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, the last time the episode was played. I think look for material that is as realistic as possible, or even as we started off talking about things that are material as authentic as possible. And this is what I mean. So here with the course book Kickstart, I tried to sort of use material, things that make the material that looks kind of authentic, it looks real as possible as it possibly can be. So each episode, there are teenagers that speak about how they can change the world in a better way. So I think it's really important nowadays to create materials that are about the real world, because students now know about the real world, they can access it with technology. And so we have to use real world kind of material. So YouTube channel is an example of this. This is another example. This is a true story that I put in a recent course book about a family there in where I live. There was a big earthquake in 2016 which destroyed many houses, and some entire towns were destroyed. And this is a story of a family that in their town, which is completely destroyed, they come every day to make sure that the hydroelectric power plant is still working to provide energy to the whole region. And their house is the only house that is still standing. And so it's a true story which the students can relate to, graded to the level, so that, you know, this is the level here will be about A2, B1, with a glossary so that they can understand the difficult vocabulary. I think the important thing with the material that you use, it's got to be positive. It's got to be like, if you look at things like the mobile phone. I was speaking to a group of students, 14-year-olds, last month about the telephone, and I was saying to them, you know, they often hear negative things about the telephone, about the mobile phone. Negative all the time. But actually, there are positive things you can do with the phone. And to focus on that, what they can do in a positive way with their technology. So you can change someone's life by being positive on the phone, by sending a smiley, by sending a positive message, by saying to someone that you care. You can do it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but do something good with it. And so what I tended to do with the material that I wrote is to try to get the students to make a promise to improve in some way, to improve something. And here, what can you do to make social media a more positive experience for everyone? I'm going to start, I'm going to continue, I'm going to stop, date, and then get them to sign it. And then they can actually even go back and check to see if their progress. So I think course book as well is trying to look at things from not preaching to them about how bad the phone is, because they hear it a million times, not preaching to them about how bad things are, but to talk about what positive things they can do. It's much more of an incentive. Responsibility, teaching children about responsibility. I feel that course books now, the direction they're heading in is to take on much more of a role as English teachers. We are taking on the role of being responsible citizens of the world. Or English is a vehicle for that, because it's the language in which people communicate throughout the world. In many parts of the world, they use English, and so responsibility, or not just teaching English, but using material that teaches, that helps our students to become responsible. And also empowerment is another word, which is very important to remember when preparing and writing material, is that we want stuff that kids can do something about. There's no point in talking about things that don't belong to them. We have to think about things that they can do. If we're going to talk about the environment, think about things that they can change in their habits about the environment. There's no point in telling students, talking about having an article that talks about taking less flights, long haul flights, or changing their car. They can't do that. They're too young. But you can talk to them about how long the showers are, to maybe shorten the length of the shower, to turn the tap off when they're cleaning their teeth. This kind of thing. Things that are actually possible for them to do, to involve them, to engage them. A lot in Italy at the moment, there's a lot of emphasis on this, on using English as a means of talking about digital responsibility and about civil education, about being a responsible citizen. So you can use this kind of stuff and talk about real world issues to also teach English. Just the last thing I want to share with you is Window Swap. If you haven't, I will send you the link to this, but it's a great thing to engage students. There is a website called Window Swap where you just click on the link, you click on a button, and it takes you to a random window in the world. A view from a window, like I did it the other day, and I got a view from the window. Where is this? Can you see the location here on the photo? Can you see the location?
Connecticut.
Because I can't see because of the, but like, okay, I'll go to the next one.
USA.
Okay, USA, this is India. Kerala, I think in India.
Kerala. Palermo.
This is Palermo in Italy.
Italy.
This is a site called Window Swap, and the students love this because it's random. You don't know where you're going to go. And so you can get your students to describe the view from the window. You can get your students to upload a view from their window and put it on the side. You just have to make a 5-minute film. This is a screenshot, but it's actually a film. 5 minutes, and things happen in the film, depending on the view. So you can do a game where the students have to, they just have to, okay, the view from their window. Okay, so as I said, all of these things I will make sure that they come to you, the links that I've just shown you. if you want to know anything about graded readers and things like that, just contact me, because I think it's a very, very interesting field. Maybe we can even speak about it a bit more next year, okay, about graded readers. I'm actually on the executive, on the board of directors of the Extensive Reading Foundation, which is a foundation that promotes reading around the world. And so I'd love to speak about that with you one day, maybe to talk about reading and stories and how they can enhance your lessons. There's another thing, keep in touch, because over the next few weeks, I'm going to launch, maybe launch is too grand a word, but I'm going to begin, my website is opening. So that's another thing that I can send to you, the link once it's open. So you feel free to come and have a look. I'll be posting material on there, more links, stories, songs, and so on, material that you can use and you can interact with at your leisure, okay? And so I'm really sorry I've gone on maybe 1 hour, 10 minutes. I'm sorry to keep you so long, but I really couldn't resist telling you that story. You can also contact me on this email address, okay? Lacey Freeman, or in social media, as I think I said last time, Michael Lacey Freeman. If you type that in, you will find me.
That's a unique name online. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Anyone would like to ask something?
Yeah, if there are any questions, please ask. I mean, you're like heroes. I mean, you've been going for how long? It's now what, like 4 p.m. The teachers,
Yes, it's 4 p.m.
Teachers are tough. Teachers are strong. This is one thing that we all have in common. Like, you go around the world, you speak to teachers, they're some of the toughest people. And I think COVID proved that to the world, that teachers are tough.
Oh yeah, teachers are the toughest guys ever.
Yes, the foundation. So it's been a privilege to speak to you. Yes, Superman. Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Yes, Superman. Thank you very, very much, Michael, for sharing and for having this very calm, like hearing everything and listening to you is really encouraging and calming down. So thank you for that. Thank you for the ideas and for little tools that we can certainly use during our process.
Well, let's just keep in touch. That would be, I would love that.
Yes,
So
and I like your idea of next year coming. Definitely, yes.
Just try and stop.
Yes.
Just try and stop. If you invite me, I'm coming. I wanted to come now in March. It just proved to be impossible with the obstacles that were.
Everything we had.
I was really sad about that. And I was kind of, but next year, definitely, I'd love to be able to see you all face to face. And
yes, finally, I hope that we will manage to get everybody out and meet face to face as we used to.
wonderful.